It's a smooth operator. I've got a smooth operator sitting opposite me. Folks, it's time for that time of the week. It's time for Tech Talk.
It's time now for the latest news on what's hot and what's not in the world of technology with Matthew Dickerson on Tech Talk. Here on TCFM 88.9.
Are you a smooth operator?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you're saying it in a positive way or a negative way, Richard.
No, I'm saying it positive.
Oh, good. Oh, yes, definitely then.
In a nice way.
That's good.
In a very
Absolutely.
nice way. Mate, Tech Talk today, we've got birds that fly into buildings and fly into high buildings, into glass and those sort of things. We had a bird do a kamikaze on our window here the other day. I went outside while a record was make sure it was okay and flown away, so it was all right. But basically, there's a possible solution to stop birds flying into glass.
We're flying into anything that we
yeah.
build, really. And you think about it, as birds have evolved over the millions of years that birds have been evolving, probably longer than that. The idea is that they've been able to navigate by looking down at the ground. They've got eyes on either side of their head,
Yes.
and they're looking down at the ground, navigating. For all those millions of years they've evolved, they haven't had big things like buildings, skyscrapers, mobile phone towers, even wind turbines in their road. So they've just navigated and looked down. Sure, some trees they had to worry about, but they've just flown along quite nicely. But we are finding that the biggest source of man-made bird deaths across the world is by putting a structure in their place, something tall, obviously. So some researchers have worked on outputting some noise and basically emitting a noise from a large tower, from a building, from whatever structure there is in place, and then they've been filming what happens with different frequencies with all the birds that fly along in areas that are very heavily congested with birds to work out the right frequencies, how they affect different bird species, different times of year, a whole range of things. So researchers believe they've come up with some solutions, and essentially it might get to the point not too far down the track. If you build a building or a structure over a certain height, you'll have to put some sort of bird frequency out there to basically make birds look up and go, oh, there's something there, there's a noise I can hear, look up and live. Maybe there's an advertising campaign they need with the birds. Look up and live, oh, there's a structure there, I better fly around that.
Different frequencies for different birds. I mean, what you want to do is the pest around the place is the pigeon. So I'm hoping that a magpie, say, would have a different frequency to a pigeon, so they can knock off the pigeons and keep the magpies flying.
Well, I'm actually thinking the opposite. I like the idea of having some sort of frequency on my helmet when I go riding my push bike, so magpies don't attack me. So that was, I was thinking this is great for birds and when we build these structures, but I also thought there's lots of people that get attacked by magpies each summer, so maybe there's something that we can generate from there as well. But anyway, look, I think good news, because one of the criticisms we hear about wind turbines, for example, is, oh no, they kill lots of birds. It's not just wind turbines, it is any tall structure we put up. But if we can have some way of making them realise that there is something there, that sounds like a good news story.
Can sweat charge up your smartwatch?
Well, this one isn't sweat that's being used. It's actually a thermoelectric generator that relies on a difference in temperature. So TEGs, thermoelectric generators, exist, and they rely on temperature on one side of the device and a different temperature on the other side, and they use that difference to create electricity. But some researchers have said, well, what about if we applied that to a human and put something on their wrist? Now, normally a thermoelectric generator is stiff, but they've created one in a polyurethane band, and it's at the moment powerful enough to generate electricity to power a small LED. Not a full smartwatch yet, but that's where they're trying to get to, because smartwatches are fantastic, but you have to charge them every day, and that's a bit of a pain. So if you can have some way of just wearing the watch and having the difference, and this is the incredible part, just our body heat essentially would be used to generate that electricity. Now, it works better in winter than it does in summer, because the difference in temperature is more in winter. Our body temperature is higher than the outside temperature in winter. In summer, it might not generate much electricity at all, but it might still get to the point where we could go 3 or 4 days without charging our smartwatch. Ultimately, the researchers are hoping to get to the point where you just put your smartwatch on, and just by you wearing it, charges it up enough to keep using that smartwatch on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, my watch, it's got to see light.
Right.
For a few bit every day, and it keeps on going, keeps immaculate time, as long as it sees light. You put it in a drawer and kill the light, it stops within about an hour. It doesn't like it, but anyway. So we've talked about smartwatch, about smart smart glass these days.
It seems like anything that you want to sell these days.
It's got to be
has the word
smart.
Now, you'd be familiar with double glazing. A lot of radio
Yep.
studios have double glazing to keep sound
Look
out.
at that window, it's triple glazed.
Triple glaze, there
Yeah.
you go. So, double glazing has been a concept we've known about for a while. The problem with double glazing is it's just taking whatever temperature's outside and trying to keep it from the inside with no regard for what you want to come in or out. This smart glass that's been created is double glazed, but in between the two panes of glass are a bunch of little micro mirrors, and they will automatically redirect light and heat depending on what's happening. So, for example, hot summer's day, you want as much light reflected as possible. So those mirrors turn around to reflect most of that light out. Some light comes in enough to still light with natural light inside. But then when you get to winter, you want as much light to come in as possible and as much heat to come in. So they'll change their angle depending where the sun is in the sky and where people are inside to bring as much of that heat and light inside. The early signs say that you'll save on your heating and cooling bill by 35%. Because you're getting heat in when you need it and heat reflected when you don't need it.
How much is the window?
Expensive.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
again, we're at prototype stage at this stage,
Yeah.
and I don't see us putting it on our houses tomorrow. It'll firstly be used in apartment blocks, in office buildings, in skyscrapers, because the energy bill is a huge component of a skyscraper, for example. But once it starts getting built in production, in higher production levels, then we'll be making the choice at some point in time. I can put normal glass in, double glaze a bit more. Hey, double glaze with smart mirrors inside it. Gee, that's just a little bit tiny bit more. I think I'll go that way.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
All right, very quickly, QR codes are being basically forged.
Hijacked.
Well, I mean, people will do anything these days, won't they?
Incredible. When we see a QR code,
Yeah.
we've got no idea what it says.
No.
There's about up to 2,500 characters that could be in a QR code. We can't read them. It's not designed for us to read. We faithfully and blindly put our phone in front of it, scan it in as we're going in to have our coffee or go to the pub, whatever it might be. So one man in Adelaide thought he'd take advantage of this. He put QR codes over the top of the normal QR codes, just went around to a bunch of cafes and restaurants, etc., stuck his own QR code over the top. When you walk into that cafe, you pulled your phone out, scanned it, and instead of going to a sign-in page, you went to an anti-vax page. So this guy was an anti-vaxxer. He thought, here's the way to get my message out there. Let's go around and put fake QR codes over the real QR codes. People were confused. They scanned the QR code to walk into a restaurant and saw an
What's going on?
anti-vax page.
Yeah.
Oh, is this guy an anti-vax at this restaurant, or is this a new government message? What's going on here? Anyway, the guy was arrested. He'll face up to a $10,000 fine for tampering with COVID-19 QR codes. But it just goes to the point that everything with technology, we trust it a lot, but we've also just got to apply that little bit of a dosage of common sense, because when you scan a QR code going into a restaurant and get an anti-vax site, you've got to say, I'm not sure if this seems
This is
like-"
legit, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, start picking off the one that's been stuck on.
Yeah, look, is there another one over the top there?
We've got about a minute left. Very quickly, as we drive around the region, we see more and more wind farms. We've mentioned them already this morning. When you drive down to Wellington, of course, you see the one on the left in the distance going down the Maryvale Hill. But basically, we can have a wind farm now without a propeller. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's some researchers again working on what's the most efficient way to get power out of a wind farm. One of the problems with the traditional propeller wind farm is that the front turbines get most of the wind, and as you go back through the wind farm, those back turbines aren't getting as much. So they've come up with a vertical axis. So if you think about a propeller, it's on a horizontal axis and spins from that perspective, but they've got a vertical axis, so it spins around the actual tower. What they've found is that if you have a vertical axis spinning turbine, actually having them close together works better, because the actual turbulence that's generated helps the ones nearby.
Yeah.
So when you have a wind farm of maybe, say, 20, 30 wind turbines, actually having vertical axis ones can help the overall production by about 15%. So we see the ones like at Badengra that you mentioned now. Just get used to the fact that in a few years' time we might see some vertical axis wind turbines because they are more efficient.
Matthew, always good to talk with you. Tech talk with vertical wind farms and smart watches and smart glass and birds that are going to be living instead of dying. It's been great this morning. We'll talk to you next week, same time, about 9:20.
Thanks, Richard.
Matthew Dickinson and Tech Talk, DCFM 88.9, and it's 26 to 10.